How do we go back to a world where trust is becoming a significant value for each of us? How do you use Hedera as a trust layer for AI?
Eric Piscini, the CEO of Hashgraph, a leading public network for decentralized applications, dApps.
How do you create this sense of trust? Because that's been one of the biggest challenges with blockchain and crypto.
We trust a single company to deliver that AI to us. We actually don't know how those companies operate, and those companies might disappear tomorrow. I want to make sure that whatever I do with this AI, I can continue to use it in the future, even if the company operating that model is not in business anymore, right? So how you do this? We need to enforce a decentralized solution for my interaction with AI to be still available to me, regardless of what happened to those companies. I think that's the opportunity that blockchain, DLT, and crypto together have a chance to do.
Hello, everyone. My team and I have been crafting content and stories that inform, inspire, empower, and bring real value to you. If you haven't already, please take a moment to check that you're subscribed. It's the easiest way to support our work and stay updated with every new release. Join us on this journey of learning and discovery. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for our latest drops. Hello and welcome to the Dinis Guarda YouTube podcast, powered by citiesabc.com, businessabc.net, and wisdomia.ai. We keep profiling the global leaders, the thought leaders, and the people making a change in the world that is more and more disrupted and inspired by technologies, by artificial intelligence, by a lot of different things, but especially what we celebrate in this series and profile is the doers. Today, I'm particularly excited to welcome Eric Piscini, the CEO of Hashgraph, a leading public network for decentralized applications, dApps. Hashgraph develops a secure, trusted, and sustainable decentralized world with blockchain technologies, also known as Web3. Based on the Hashgraph consensus algorithm invented by Dr. Lehman Baird, Hashgraph supports the ongoing growth and development of Hedera, including tools to help dApp builders get to market faster. Hashgraph recently announced a private, permissioned network powered by Hedera HashSphere that delivers the security, compliance, and interoperability required for enterprises to utilize DLT. Previously, Eric held executive and management roles at IBM Watson Health, Emerging Business Networks, Deloitte, and Citizens Reserve. Eric also advises multiple companies like Tinium Inc. and Avenir Health. He is also an investor in companies like Curve, acquired by PayPal, and Suku. He is an active member of the Forbes Technology Council, contributing thought leadership on blockchain and emerging technologies. He has been featured in publications like The Wall Street Journal, Forbes, and Bloomberg. Eric holds a master's degree in economics, CY Cergy Paris Université, and a master's degree in computer science and automation, Pierre and Marie Curie University.
Eric Piscini, you are one of the biggest personalities in the blockchain world, especially as leading one of the biggest platforms of blockchain, and as well an innovative distributed consensus algorithm that is different from a lot of other blockchains, but that has been bringing a lot of innovation to everything in the world of digital currencies and the world of digital distributed ledgers. So before we kick off with all these different things, my first question is, in terms of your personal background, if you look at the stage where you are in your career and you go back, I don't know, a couple of decades, what would be the difference that you saw that probably a couple of decades ago you would not probably imagine where you are?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Well, first, thank you for having me on. Really excited to share some of the updates about Hedera and Hashgraph here. Well, it's interesting. So 20 years ago is about when I moved from France to the US. And very different stage in life, very different stage of development. But we were in the middle of the internet adoption, right? So we had a template for innovation that I think we can replicate partly with digital assets 20 years later on what happened then that we can replicate now. That would be an interesting point. Is that what you are asking for? Something like
I
that?
will go a bit early, if
Yeah.
possible. So I would like to see, for like you said, from France to the US, as you've been an investor, you've been working in executive management in IBM. So I would like to go, let's say, 2 or 3 decades before, if you would imagine where you are now. I think for our
Yeah.
audience all over the world.
I mean, maybe I give you background from even more than 3 decades ago, right? So I was born in France, and I went to engineering school. So my background is technology, right? I was always attracted by technology, and then I graduate from engineering school, and I decided to go do another year of college to learn about economics. And it's important because I always wanted to understand both sides of the world, the technology piece and the business side. And fast forward, a decade or so later, I am now in the U.S., moved with my family, very young kids, and working for a large pharmaceutical company and doing IT work. And then I transitioned into Deloitte, and I transitioned into Deloitte to work on merger and acquisition, innovation, fintech, payments, a lot of things that were already exciting, right? But at that point, no one would have said we have another major revolution coming in the technology space, right? We went through internet and we were about to start the cloud evolution, and cloud was everything, right? We were talking about cloud with our clients, we were talking about cloud with, anything we were doing. And of course, mobile came up at the same time, right? 2007, the launch of the iPhone, all of that happened. And I don't know, 2012 is when I came across the Satoshi white paper. And I come across that paper as an engineer, and I realized how different that technology could impact. The technology was very different, and how that technology can impact the business world. So now I'm with Deloitte, and I'm looking at this from a Fortune 2000 perspective because that's the clients of Deloitte. And I'm like, we need to do something about that because they're going to come a point where they're going to have questions about crypto. They're going to have questions about the technology underneath blockchain. They're going to have questions about business impact, technology impact, integration impact, regulatory impact. And so we started working on this. And I did that for many years at Deloitte. It was a fantastic journey to be this early in the industry and look at it from not from a crypto point of view, but from a Fortune 2000 point of view. Very exciting time. And then after that, I left into do a quick startup. Was a crazy time in the industry, and so I did a startup in the supply chain space, and then I went back to a big firm, IBM, and at IBM, I was working on building innovation platforms for the healthcare and life science industry, including in blockchain, obviously. We did really, really interesting projects, and then we had to sell that division of IBM where I was, called Watson Health. We had to sell that division to a private equity firm, which is kind of the end of my journey with Watson Health at that point, and I went to Hedera. So back to your question, what something I would not have anticipated 20 years ago is the fact that we had such a big innovation coming our way in the 2010s that no one was expecting, and yeah, and we can talk about that in a minute, but that was very unexpected.
Yeah, you have a fantastic career and a career, like you said, that touches some of the biggest companies in the world. And you went on the mainstream corporate, and you came then for the the innovation part of corporations versus less corporate and more distributed companies as well. So before we go on this, and I want to touch as well your education, because you have a master's degree in economics and a
Mhm.
master's degree in computer science and an engineer degree. So you have a substantial education. So from the education, and let's say again, for the last 3 decades that you went, like you mentioned, there was a huge amount of innovation. And as well, you are French, but you work in the US, which is a different as well way of looking at business, looking at solutions. So a bit of this background between the culture clash of Europe and the US, but as well corporates versus innovation in startups, and as well in companies that are changing the way we look at technology.
Hmm. Yeah, and we do navigate, many of us, right? I'm sure you have the same background, which is global citizens operating in different dimensions, whether it's geographical dimension, human dimension, industries, um, different title, different jobs, right, over the years. To me, that's the exciting part, right? It is very exciting to live in the world we are in today because even 20 or 40 years ago, it was very hard to change your trajectory as a professional as much as we can today. Today, you can really change your trajectory many times. So that's exciting. Again, my background is, I don't think that's very unique, but I always wanted to understand the world. And so engineering was one way to do it from a technical point of view, right? I was mechanical and electrical engineering. But I realized very quickly that I was missing the business side of things. And so, that's the reason why I went to school again to do that degree in economics. But I'm always on that journey. I think that's not a journey you stop with your formal education. It's that journey of learning is something you have to continue to do your entire life, not just your professional life, but your entire life. Because things are so exciting, and if you want to be part of it, you need to understand them. And to understand them, you have to be a student every single day of your life. So that's exciting. And, there is an opportunity that was given to me to travel and to be exposed to different culture and different countries, different languages. And that's really an opportunity. And I invite everybody, my kids including, to go and visit the world and try new things and different things, because that's how you grow as an individual. Um, you mentioned culture clash. I don't know if it's a culture clash. I think it's a cultural difference for sure between the way the and it's hard to give stereotypes here, right? Because you have such diversity between the different countries in Europe and different cultures in Europe as well as the US. So it's easy to overgeneralize on this topic. But the one thing that I would say is there is an appetite for risk in the US that is much higher than in Europe. And the appetite for risk is actually translated into different types of regulations, different types of incentive structure, different types of um, consideration of what is failure. And there is a lot of difference around that notion of risk taking between Europe and the US. So that's the way I think of it, right? And I'm in Madrid this week because there is a big conference merged in Madrid, and you can sense that things are changing, right? So what I just said earlier is what I think I saw when I arrived in the US 20 years ago. But today, you feel that level of energy and that level of risk taking is actually spreading to the rest of the world. The rest of the world is becoming more courageous in a way and taking more risk and being more driving innovation more than before. And maybe because it was the right time, maybe because most of the very large organizations in the world today are, at least in technology, are mostly Americans.
Yeah, it's a very good point, and I love what you just mentioned about the risk, this getting around the world, because this innovation is critical for our civilization and the way we do our businesses, our culture, our interactions. So you are the CEO of Hashgraph, and for people listening to us, I interview actually Lehman Baird, that was the inventor and the founder. So Hedera's Graph is a public ledger launched in 2019, and as of September 2024, its source code was donated to the Linux Foundation as an open source project called Yero.
Mhm.
And as well, Hashgraph is a slightly different protocol from most of the blockchains because it's an innovative distributed consensus algorithm and directed a cyclic graph dark data structure that provides a fast, fair, and secure method for distributed ledgers. So which is slightly different from most of the block and chain model. So from the work of since 2019 until 2025, where we are now, there's a lot of things that happen, and you have both the protocol, but there's a lot of different things that you've been doing and creating a global corporation that has one of the biggest tokens in the world, but as well that has been bringing a lot of innovation, both in terms of speed, fairness, security. So I would like to firstly touch your role as CEO and as well your onboarding on Hashgraph and a bit of the vision that you saw from the beginning until now and where you aim to take the organization.
Yeah, thank you. A lot of questions, a lot of
Yes.
different points. So I think so. First, the role of CEO of Hashgraph. So Hashgraph is a team behind the Hedera network, right? The Hedera network has three different important components. The first one is what we call the Hedera Council, which is the set of organizations, 31 today, going to 39, who are actually operating the nodes of the network, right? So we are a public ledger, which means that anyone can see what's happening on the ledger. It's public information, but the nodes of the network, the validators of the transactions, are selected, which is why we call ourselves the permissioned public blockchain, right? So that's the first very important thing that we have to understand, because what it means is when you go to market and you explain to people who is involved in the Hedera, the council is a key part of that. And the council is constituted of very large organizations, right? Think of IBM and Google and Dell and LG and banks and law firms and so on. And you can see the list on our website. That is a very important piece of who we are, right? The credibility of those firms translated into the credibility of Hedera as a trusted platform, right? So that's the first component of the Hedera ecosystem is the council. The second part is but the foundation, which is the ecosystem activation player, right? The foundation is here to say, I'm going to enable other organizations to start building on Hedera by giving them a little bit of financial support, right? So really activating the flywheel. So we are talking here about the infrastructure around Hedera, right? So how do you create a bridge? How do you integrate into exchanges, right? The Coinbase, Gemini, Binance of the world. All of that is a word of the foundation. And then everything else is Hashgraph. So everything else is how do we build the product? How do we build the network? How do we operate the network? How do we have all the engineers working together to deliver that value? How do we interoperate with Hyro, which is the open source platform we launched last year? How do we do marketing and communication and cybersecurity and network operations and all of this? So all of this I just listed is Hashgraph. And the founders, Lehman Baird, you mentioned earlier, and Mance Harmon, both of them are at Hashgraph, right? Because this is where the core of the network is, the core of the vision, the core of the solution is. And so I am the CEO of Hashgraph. I started 2.5 years ago, and the interesting dimension of being the CEO of a distributed, ledger technology team is that the team also is distributed, right? So the team is 100% remote. We don't have an office, and we operate in a very different way than traditional, businesses, which is typically to be in an office. So, that to me is exciting because that's, I almost want to say it's like an innovation when it comes to running a company, right? Being 100% remote is a kind of innovation. That is something that we are still learning, all of us. I can go deep into some of the other differentiator of Hedera if you want, because I think that's worth
Yeah, it's very
mentioning.
important. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to, especially, I think like you just touched, and I interview, of course, the founders. So, but I would like to see how the two organizations work. I think that's very important because I think at the moment we have kind of an audience that is very into the tokens and understands the tokens, and probably some of them are with my audience, and
Yeah.
others that are on the technology. And
Mhm.
like me, I'm actually probably more excited to the technology than the speculative part, but you guys are still one of the top tokens in the world. So, and as well, the way you work between the two entities is very interesting. If you could elaborate on that. And like you
Yeah.
mentioned as well, Hedera, you guys are working with some of the biggest organizations in the world, which I think it's important to highlight that.
Yeah.
If you could touch the two parts.
Yeah. So it's really the three, really, not the two, right?
Yeah, three.
So the
Yeah,
cancer is the big organization running the node and building on the network. The second is Hashgraph, which is the technology, marketing, communication, security team behind the network. And the third one is the foundation activating what we call the edge bar economy, right? So the foundation would be more focused on making sure that edge bar as a token is used by as many organizations as possible and integrated as in many platforms as we can. Platform being bridges, exchangers, and so on. They also enable, some of the interesting, funny things that we all do in blockchain, like meme coins and NFTs and all of those token activities, which is really important, right? It's really important to continue the energy level as part of the project. And then what we do at Hashgraph is we actually support everything, right? So when we have a large organization coming to us saying, I need to build on the Hedera network, a supply chain solution, which is very, traditional business, then we support that. But we also support the foundation team when they come to us and they say, we have a new NFT team and they need some support from a technology point of view to integrate with your smart contract, for example. We support that as well. Or we have a new wallet who wants to come to market and they want to understand how that works. We support that, right? So I see Hashgraph as both the foundation of the project with the founders and the core of the technology, as well as the technology enablement for Hedera and HBAR to be successful. All right, that's really the mission of Hashgraph. And I think what I can also share is, the Web3 industry started in a very, very unique way, which never happened before, right? And in the history of business. And we started by creating the money. All right, so think of Web3 as the first industry in the world that instead of hard working, generating revenue, and getting the money, we did the opposite. We started by creating the money, and then we are spending the money, generating now a return, generating revenue, and then continuing the cycle. So we have this unique opportunity to create the first step of the business by creating our own money. In our context, it's HBAR, right? So that creates the first set of value in the ecosystem, and then after that we start executing on that vision that Lehman and Mans had, and the value of HBAR goes up because this is the utility of the network. We are a proof of stake network, so you need to stake in order to secure the network, and after that the business continues. So we are in the process of not just spending that money, spending those HBAR that we created at the beginning of the project. We are also in the process of creating real enterprise-focused product on the top of Hedera, so those products can be consumed by large-scale organizations. So today we have what we call studios, and those studios are a set of software and assets and partnerships and documentation that we've built on the top of Hedera, on the top of the network, to activate a client or a set of clients. So, for example, we have a tokenization studio, and the tokenization studio helps asset managers and investors build a technology platform without the complexity of understanding every single detail of the Hedera network, right? So think of it as an abstraction layer, and that abstraction layer helps you as a client of Hedera build a solution for your own benefit, right? Tokenization of money market fund, tokenization of real estate, for example. And that's the evolution of the industry, not just us, but the evolution of the industry is to now move up the stack, if you want, from the infrastructure and the trust layer, which is Hedera, to now solutions on the top of it, software solutions that you can consume and benefit from the Hedera network.
So Hedera network and Hashgraph, HBAR as well. You are probably one of the, well, at the moment, top 20 token in the world, 18 as we speak today, as of 6th of October 2025. And one of the things particular that makes you guys very special is that you have some of the biggest organizations in the world thriving on your protocol. So we have banks, governments, and Google that are actively building on Hashgraph tech. So can you elaborate on that? And just for people listening to us, of course, I interview your founder, and as you will put the links for that. But I just want to touch, especially the last things that you guys have been doing, because just for people listening, and I think it's important to reinforce again that most of people associate the term blockchain with Bitcoin and Ethereum, but as well, even traditional blockchain doesn't completely apply to a Hashgraph. You are effectively a distinct system. So I would like to touch this, and especially all the institutions that you are having on your
a few things. So first on the technology side, right? So Hedera is different. You mentioned because we are technically not a blockchain. We're not a chain of blocks. And I'm sure you can find a lot of information. And you go back to the interview of Lehman Baird on this podcast, you can understand why the technology is different. But what's interesting to me is what does that mean? What it means is that we are the most secure blockchain in the world. And again, you can look at it from a technical point of view. We are ABFT, which is asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerant. Again, technical jargon for a lot of things you can learn online. But again, the translation from a business point of view is that we guarantee fair ordering of transactions. Fair ordering a transaction means that if we decide, you and me, to send a transaction for validation to the network is going to guarantee that whoever sends the request first will get confirmed first, right? That's fair ordering. And it's extremely important in the context of, in the context of pretty much everything. But fair ordering is very important in the context of trading, for example. You don't want someone to front run you because you can see that you're about to sell some shares, and because I know that I can be ahead of you and sell shares or buy shares before you at a price that is different than if I buy those shares after you, right? So front running is a significant market in trading, significant issue in trading, and we prevent that from happening by having fair ordering. Right, so again, the technology is interesting, very good. The translation of that is even better because it means that you can really build a business on the top of Hedera. The second piece that is very important too, the second piece is that when you pay a transaction fee to the Hedera network, you pay with your H bars, like every other blockchain in the world, you pay with the crypto, but the price you pay for the transaction fee is always in dollar, never in crypto, and always very, very cheap. So a transaction fee on the Hedera network for a consensus transaction is 100 of a penny. It's extremely low, right? It's extremely low. And the reason it's important, because regardless of the value of HBAR on Coinbase or anywhere else, you will still pay 100 of a penny for that transaction. And we are very unique in that context, right? It's very few blockchain are doing this. It is extremely important in the context of business because if you start a business and you want to run on Hedera, if you don't know in advance how much you're going to have to pay for transaction fees, then you cannot build a business, right? You don't know if you're going to have to pay $10 or a cent or $20 tomorrow for the same transaction. There is no way you can build a business if you operate like this. So we guarantee that you will always pay a fixed price for a transaction at any time in the future in US dollar, which is very important. And the third differentiator, right? So the first one was the technology, the pure technology fair ordering, strong security, and so on. Second one was the fixed price of transaction. The third one is the cancel, which is the 31 organization I mentioned who are building and running the network, right? So their commitment to building, their commitment to operationally run the network is first very commendable, but also very important because that's how you generate real traction for a project, right? So those organizations are building. I can give you some examples. So we have two banks, Standard Bank and Shinhan Bank, South Africa and Korea, and they are working together with a platform to exchange to do cross-border payments between them, right? So they use our technology to exchange currencies between Korea and South Africa, South Korea and South Africa, all right? And they use that technology to do that exchange in real time with low friction at a very, very cheap transaction fee. So that's an example of our council members building on the network. And cross-border payments always has been one of the critical use cases for blockchain, right? From the very beginning of Bitcoin, we all said, cross-border is going to be one of the very interesting use cases. And of course, we do that. We do that on Hedera.
No, this is very impressive, and I think for people listening to us, I know that there's always questions people still discovering. I think there's, of course, the big organizations we're talking about and experts like us talking about these things, but then there's a big confusion around the tokens. And this happens in a lot of banks. For instance, I recently was doing a presentation for a multi-billion dollars fund, one of the biggest in the world, and they didn't know what was blockchain. And this is actually one thing that reality is different from what you're doing. But I think coming back to what you guys are doing, I want to touch what you just mentioned because I think it's quite impressive. So at the moment, as we speak, the Hedera is governed by a council of up to 39 global organizations, not anonymous validators. Yeah. This is a big differentiation between you guys and I think all the blockchain major, especially top 20 like you guys. And as well, you have quietly advanced across key sectors. You mentioned banking, but you have as well, for instance, one of the things that I think it's quite remarkable is the EQTY lab deployed by Verifiable compute platform on NVIDIA Blackwell chips, achieving 400,000 X performance boost with Can UK and Accenture. So I would like to touch, first of all, these 49 organizations, how you work, because that's a quite different differentiation from most of the other blockchains. And second, some of these projects we mentioned banking. Now I'm bringing one key in technology with two of the biggest organizations in the world, NVIDIA and Accenture.
Yeah. So I think on the 39, we talked about that a little bit, the cancel, right? So the cancel is the critical differentiator for us, demonstrating that the large organizations like, the Google and the IBM of the world are building on the Hedera network. But it's also really interesting because they bring their own ecosystem to us, right? So all of those large organizations have relationships with thousands of other organizations, and they need to build their own systems and their own transaction platforms with those people. So they also bring their ecosystem to Hedera, which is kind of a network effect for us when we can reach a huge amount of organizations via the cancel itself. So that value is tremendous. The value of the cancel is tremendous. And we only accept, top tier companies to join the cancel, or companies who are very, very involved into building on Hedera, building blockchain solutions on Hedera. So that's a really important piece of the value proposition for us. What we do with Equity Lab is tremendous. So now we are moving into the AI space, right? So Equity Lab is an organization out of Stanford University, California, and they have developed a solution with us to create a trust layer for AI, right? So let me unpack that for a minute. So the trust layer of AI is when today you use an AI model, an LLM, when you have that LLM in a learning mode, when you operate it, when you prompt that LLM, when you use a chat bot on the top of it, chat GPT, when you use an agent AI, all of those activities we believe, must be anchored into a trust layer, anchored into a blockchain in our context onto Hedera. And the reason we need to do that is because we need to understand how those AI supply chain activities are operating, right? We need to understand how do they consume, learn, and so on. And we also need to be able to go back in time and say, this AI generated this answer with this data set, and you can replicate that event, all right? For auditability, for compliance, for a lot of different reasons. And what we did with Equity Lab is we said, well, build the technology and embed that technology into the chips. So then when the computer runs for an AI need, right, whether that need is, again, an agent or a large model running on that computer, automatically the chip itself will anchor the activity onto the Hedera blockchain. So now you have a high level of integrity of not only the AI model, but the connection between the model and Hedera, which now gives you the guarantee that this model is doing what it's supposed to do. And if it doesn't, you have a way to go back in time and audit this activity because we have no betrayal of the AI supply chain. And that's very, very unique, very differentiated. We are really excited about the opportunities. We are partnering with Accenture to go to market with this innovation in different sectors in Europe and in the US. And we are at the beginning of this journey, so we don't have a lot of great stories to tell yet, but the technology itself is just an amazing piece of technology that we've built with Equity Lab.
Oh, we have quite a lot of impressive just the names that you have associated with you. So I want to touch before I want to ask some questions around your leadership, but before that, so some of the real world use cases of Hedera Hashgraph, you mentioned banking and we touched just AI and cloud computing, but you have asset tokenization, which enables fractional ownership of real estate, commodities, art, and digital assets. You have supply chain, we have decentralized IDs, you have micropayments, ESG and carbon, NFTs, which you, in your case, benefit from energy efficiency. And as well, you have a lot of case studies, especially at the moment, I saw that the total, in terms of at least trends that have been going on the Hashgraph, the growth of stable coins on the Hedera network, which at the moment, it's quite becoming an interesting growth all over the world, but especially in the network. So can you elaborate a bit on some of these case studies, whatever the ones you want to highlight?
Yeah, I mean, tokenization is just a very, very important piece of innovation that will impact pretty much everything we do, right? Whether we are doing payments, whether we are buying and selling something, it will be impacted by tokenization. Tokenization is important because, well, first, it's not a new concept, right? We have tokenized things for a long time. The reason it's interesting today is because now we can actually tokenize assets at a very low cost and make those assets visible across the globe in real time. So I'll give you an example. We are doing tokenization of real estate with a company called Red Swan, right? So what we do with them is we tokenize the real estate asset. So that could be a set of buildings, that could be a resort, that could be a hotel, right? We tokenize that. And the reason we do it, it's not because we like innovation. It's because once the asset is tokenized, now you can say, I'm going to open to investors the ability to invest into this asset at a very low entry point, $100, $200. And I can do that across the globe. And by doing that, I can raise additional money, right? Or I can diversify my own portfolio. And instead of having all my money captured into a real estate project, I can redirect a portion of that money to another project to start a new one, right? In order to do that, I need to sell a portion of this asset to investors. And today, when you do that, it takes 18 months. It's expensive. With tokenization, you can tokenize your asset on blockchain, on Hedera, and offer that asset to investors across the globe, as long as you have regulatory compliance, very important. And then you can free up some of your capital, uh, illiquid capital, historically illiquid, and turn that into liquid capital. That is a very interesting point because you can do that for real estate, you can do that for stocks and bonds, and any kind of financial instruments. You can do that for wine and art and cars and any kind of asset you can think of. And it's not just about providing access; it's also the 24/7 ability. So now any asset you tokenize technically can be exposed and traded on a 24 by 7 schedule as opposed to a very limited window of time in the past. And that changes also the liquidity profile of those assets, that changes the velocity of those assets, and maybe not the value of them. The value should not change that much because you tokenize the asset, but it changes the access. So people now can buy real estate from outside of the country, if you're in the US, for a fraction of the price that they typically have to invest into, and trade that asset themselves the next day in the middle of the night. That's kind of the vision of what tokenization is doing. And we are actually doing that today, right? Like I mentioned, we do that for real estate. We do that for money market fund with Fidelity International and BlackRock. So we do have real projects running today on Hedera showing the benefit of tokenization. And we have obviously a lot of traction to do more in financial services most of the time.
Yeah, it's very impressive, and congratulations first of all, because it's very easy to talk, but I think the quantity of work and credibility that you brought to the blockchain industry is immense, and as well it's still growing, as we see from first of all the companies that you are using and that are working with you. So I want to touch now on your leadership. So as CEO of Hedera, there's a lot of things you guys are doing. So as a leader of one of the biggest protocols in the world that is bringing all this innovation, what are your goals and where you see the company going in the next 1 year? And as well, probably some of the projects that you want to highlight, not just the case studies, but projects that are dear to you and to your organization.
So I have a long-term goal, which is to turn Hedera into the trust layer of business. And we use examples today, right, to show how you do that in tokenization of financial services, how you can do that in supply chain, in identity. So there's a lot of reasons to do this. But of course, a long-term strategy needs to start somewhere. And so for the next few months, we are focusing on 4 very specific topics, and we are building additional products on the top of Hedera for our clients and anyone to be able to use Hedera very quickly and very conveniently. Those 4 topics are artificial intelligence. We talked about what we do with Equity Lab, but that's where we invest a lot of time and energy today. The second one is tokenization in general, right? So tokenization of assets we talked about. Stablecoin is the third one. And the last one is sustainability. And sustainability is a unique way of using a bunch of technologies that we have at Hedera specifically for the sustainability carbon market. So for example, we have a project with, not a project, we have a solution with Hyundai and Kia. And that project is to build a platform where we connected Hyundai and Kia and 26 of their main suppliers, right? And every time there is an event during the supply chain of building a car, whether it's the production of a piece, the assembly, the transportation, any kind of activity, generating a carbon footprint, we capture that real time on Hedera, right? Every event we capture. And at the end of the chain, not the blockchain, at the end of the supply chain, when the car gets out, we get an exact number of what is the carbon footprint of that specific car. And if you want, as a buyer of the car, you can buy carbon credits to offset the footprint of that car. All right. And that gives you a very, very tangible example of what we do in the supply chain world for sustainability, right? I love this example because Sustainability to me is important in the long run. We have to continue to build solutions that are sustainable. And the other thing I am excited about is that we didn't go to Hyundai and Kia and say, what you're doing is wrong. What we told them is what you're doing is good, and we can do something even better on the top of your supply chain, which gives you that additional value that you can actually sell to your clients when they are sensitive to sustainability or when they want to, support the environment. They can actually buy a Hyundai or a Kia as opposed to another car because you have this capability. So I really like this concept of supporting the planet, supporting an entity, a company, and of course supporting Hedera at the same time. So those I went back to the very quickly, but the four topics is where we invest our time and energy. And I mentioned earlier that today we have the studio, we could have the studios, right, which is the four topics where we build more software. Uh, our strategy is to go even higher than that and build real product, real meaning that we would charge money to the market for consuming a product that is entirely based on Hedera. And that is what we are focusing on for 2026, is building additional product.
Now that's very impressive, and I love your vision. It's a lot of work to do because we are, I would say that we are belonging, or actually in the road to a kind of a digital divide, and especially AI divide. So there's a lot of work to be taken on that direction. So touching on that, there was one article in particular that you elaborated recently. There was, and CoinDesk, there is an article of yours that is the agentic era needs a network. And partly it's probably your vision, what you mentioned before. But I would like to highlight this, and I'll just start with this, but I'd like for you to elaborate. As you move behind basic automation, we need a systems rooted in verifiability and accountability. And this is for me as well one of my major focus, because at the moment, for our children, for us, if we don't have IT digital, we have deepfakes, we have a lot of challenges that are coming with AI. I mentioned the AI divide, the digital divide, but as well, if you're dealing with a business in another part of the world, they don't know where is their ID or something like that, you can get in serious trouble. So there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of risks as well. So I would like to touch this. This was published for people listening to us. We put the link, was in 3rd September 2025, so very recently for people listening to us fresh. And I would like to hear your thoughts around this summary at least.
And thank you for the question and the reference. I typically when I think about blockchain and AI, I think of three different layers of opportunities. The first one is today when we are consuming AI solutions, we trust a single company to deliver that AI to us, right? Whether it's an OpenAI, a Google Gemini, a DeepSeek, it could be a lot of companies, right? We actually don't know how those companies operate, and those companies might disappear tomorrow, right? I mean, they are very well funded, as we all know, so there is not a chance for them to disappear, in the short term. But all of that creates a sense of discomfort to me because I want to make sure that whatever I do with this AI, I can continue to use it in the future, even if the company operating that model is not in business anymore, right? So how you do this? Well, you use decentralized technologies, right? And you say, we need to enforce a decentralized solution for my interaction with AI to be still available to me, regardless of what happened to those companies running AIs today. And that decentralization technology. So that's the first layer that is interesting. The second layer is a little bit of what we talked about Equity Lab earlier, is how do you anchor the AI supply chain onto Hedera? How do you use Hedera as a trust layer for AI? Auditability, accountability, ability to trust that your AI is giving you the right answer. All of those things can be achieved, but you need to anchor AI into a blockchain. That's the second one. And the third one is agentic AI. And think of the scenario. The scenario is I need to send money to someone, but I want to send that money only if something happened, right? And so I'm going to say to my AI agent, send money to Dinis only if something happened and do that 24/7, just monitor the activity. I don't need to be aware. I don't need to validate any of this. I just told you to do this, right? And then your agent is going to receive that whenever that happens and continue to, operate. They need a way of exchanging value, right? They need a transaction layer that you and I can trust, and that's a blockchain again, right? The trust layer of payments for agents is today a blockchain, and so I use that model because I think you have very different discussions depending on which layer of the stack you're talking about.
Yeah, I agree completely. That's a very important thing because at the moment we have, I think the numbers are around 50 billion AI agents around, but I think probably is more.
Oh yeah.
Probably is going to get probably 1 trillion very fast. And as well, a lot of these AI agents are having some kind of basic sentience capacity. Depends on how you define the sentience or at least capacity. So like you said, we're going to have a lot of challenge with humans, but not just humans. And as well, like you said, I think for me, the biggest challenge we're facing as civilization is how we put this together in a way that empowers humans. Because as well, there's a big challenge right now. Like you mentioned, for instance, you are in the US, and of course, there's a lot of issues when it comes to an AI that is picking data. For instance, Reddit is probably the biggest source of data for most of the AI LLMs. 40% around data is coming from Reddit. And then there's, of course, a lot of things. So how do we create the provenance of this data and how we can provenance of our business? So I believe that this is one of the biggest challenges. So coming on this, and you guys have a vision of creating a secure and interoperable foundation for the agentic AI. So, but the challenge here is, like you said, and I like your analogy. Whereas if you look at the Fortune 500, a lot of the companies are Fortune 1000. A lot of companies that were 50 years ago are no longer there. Vice versa. We have companies, OpenAI is an interesting case that in the space of 10 years is worth more than most of the economies around the world with $500 billion valuation and going still. But of course, these valuations go up and down, as you see with NVIDIA and so forth. So from your experience in creating this ecosystem with some of the biggest brands in the world, and you guys have IBM, you have Google, two of the biggest ones, but as well a lot of banks. How do you create this sense of trust? Because that's been one of the biggest challenges with blockchain and crypto, the sense of trust and the sense as well to create real solving products. Because I think there's only two real products that are being mainstream. One product is the crypto. The other one is the digital assets, kind of more the engineering behind the smart contracts and the different things that we're discussing here. But how can we bring this and create this trust within, like you said, the business world, which is your vision, and as well the macro part of the B2C, which is all the consumers, all the people of us that can have a trust?
Yeah. So I like that question about trust. To me, crypto is not a product. To me, crypto is a mean to an end, right? So you need crypto because you need to exchange value, because you need to stake to provide security to a staking network. Crypto is almost a technology in that context, right? It's a way to achieve something. And it could be to achieve trust. It could be the opposite, depending on how you use it, right? But that's why I think we always need to have this bigger discussion, which is crypto and distributed ledger technologies together, not opposed to, but together create an opportunity for us to recreate an environment where we can trust each other, trust, agents working on our behalf, trust devices that we are going to wear or consume. That is going to be very, very important, right? So the opportunity for us to reestablish trust in a world that I think we lost a lot of that with social media, with AI as well. How do we recreate that? How do we go back to a world where trust is becoming a significant value for each of us? I think that's the opportunity that blockchain, DLT, and crypto together have a chance to do. So how do you translate that in day to day, right? That's sometimes very hard to understand. The way I envision it is, I would have a phone, I would have a device I'm interacting with, and I would have the ability to check the um, the, the the authenticity of an activity, of a payment, of an object, of a digital object, by having a special, I call that an app, or a special feature on my phone, on my watch, on my computer, to be able to recognize the authenticity of that activity. I think that's going to translate into, sometimes you're going to see a check mark that says green, approved for you, Eric, right? Just for me. I'm going to have the certificate, the certainty that this transaction or this event or this asset is authentic. And I think that's coming. That's going to come in the next few years. So that's one way to do it, right? One way to generate trust.
Yeah, and it is the most important one. I think that's the key one. So one of the things we've been discussing in the industry, and you touched a bit that, but I want to go deeper, is about the promise of Web3. Okay, of course, Web3 right now is AI, and AI has a lot of layers and it does a lot of things. But for Web3 is the idea of having a protocol of identity for everything we're doing online, and that's partly what you guys have been doing with Hashgraph and with the consensus algorithm. So from your vision, and you guys have a lot of products that touch this, how do you see, first of all, your own definition of Web3 in the context of Hashgraph? Because a lot of variations, we can go for hours discussing how you define Web3, but as well, how you bring the Web3 ecosystem for the larger context. And you touch a lot of verticals that we are doing, but as well on the context of Web3 as an integrated system, because in the end of the day, we're talking very high profile technology systems. But for a user, they just want to click in a button and get their product solved and make sure that they have the trust that you just mentioned.
Yeah, I think the definition of Web3 is always going to be a debate. I do like what Chris Dixon came up with, which is the ownership economy, the activation, the enablement of the ownership economy. So if you look back, you say Web 1 was our ability to share information in real time across the globe, and we were reading this information. So we were reading, a website. We were reading, Wikipedia. We were consuming information, right? That was Web one. Web two is we were writing information. So we were writing on social media. We were sharing with friends. We were contributing to blogs. That's where all the social media platforms, started, right? Because now we have, as individuals, not only the ability to read, but the ability to write. And Web3 is the next evolution of that, based on the first two, is the ability to own something, be in control of that thing that you own, and decide how you're going to share and consume or participate with that piece of something that you have. I'll give you an example that we worked on when I was in IBM, and we are working now with Hedera. The ability to, especially if you live in the US, where you have a very diverse set of doctors and nurses and hospitals and specialists working with you to help you get better or improve your well-being, you get a lot of information fragmented across everybody. And there is no one who actually aggregates this information and is able to tell you your medical history in one single place. Doesn't exist. And our point is it should exist, and it should be you who actually own this information, right? So the ownership should be yours. I should own my medical history, my medical data, my lab results, all of that I should own. I should have that on my phone. I should be able to decide what to do with this information, when to share, with whom to share, for how long to share. All of that is enabled by blockchain technologies. That's a good example of what Web3 outside of financial services is gonna enable the ownership of your own data, and you are now in control of this data, right? You're not the product anymore, because that's what Web 2 was about. You turn into a product, right? We said that over and over, and now you actually control your own identity, your own assets, whether it's medical data, it could be financial data as well, and you control your own ways of payments and your own interactions. That's
Yeah,
the
it's very
definition of Web3.
yeah. So I want to touch this, okay, because of course, I agree completely with your vision. But um, just deep diving in the challenge, for instance, you mentioned the healthcare and the challenge of data. Actually, I've been building a digital twin of myself to have a control of my own data because each time I go, like you said, to an hospital, I have the challenge, first of all, that each department, even within the same hospital, don't speak. They don't have control, even within the same part of the hospital. And then it becomes very confusing because if you have a doctor that has an expertise in one thing, it doesn't speak with the doctor that's others. There's documents that get lost. There's analysis you do, they don't even follow up. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. But then there's all the cases like insurance, data privacy, data protection, all these different things. So as someone that has been working in IBM precisely in Watson Health, and as well now leading partnership with some of the top companies in the world, how can we solve this problem from your, I'm talking not just from a technology perspective. I don't think this is a problem of technology. It's a problem of, I think, what you're doing, putting people together, speaking about the problems and solving it. But I would like to hear your vision as a CEO, but as well as a pragmatic leader that is touching this.
Yeah, I think technology is the easy part now. It was not at the beginning. Now it is. Now we have the technology, no more excuses. We have the technology to build what we want to do. We have three things to overcome. The first one is the regulatory environment, right? There is a lot of limitations today, not just in the US, but across the globe, for this vision of you being in control of your own data to be a reality, right? Whether it's financial regulation, whether it's healthcare regulation, that is a critical thing that we need to continue to improve. Many steps were taken over the last few years, just the last 2 years, right? In Europe, in the US, you see the regulatory regimes changing to enable that long-term vision of ownership by the individual, which I think is really, really important. So regulatory is number one. The second one is business models. You do have a significant amount of companies who are who rely on the fact that you don't own your own data, right? In the healthcare industry, for example, you have companies, they are not known by the public, but you have a huge amount of companies who are making money out of selling data to other companies because those companies are not able to aggregate information about yourself, right? Or in the social media world, right? You have companies selling data set about Eric to other companies so that I get the right commercial at the right time. So the selling of of this information, private information, personal information, is a huge business. We need to stop that. We need to actually find a way to stop that because you should be the one in control of your data, not an intermediary. So you have a lot of changes to be made at the business model. And then the last one, which I think is probably the biggest issue to overcome, is education. And it's important because if you ask, 100 people around you today and you say, we're going to give you the ability to control your own data, your medical data. Let's stick with medical data for a minute. All your health data, medical data, wellness information, all of that is going to be in your control, and you're going to be the one deciding what to do, when to do, with whom to do. Are you comfortable with this? And I'm going to tell you, probably more than 50% are going to say no, because I'm afraid I'm going to lose something. Afraid I'm going to misplace something. I'm afraid I'm going to touch the information. I'm going to change the integrity of that information, and then the decision someone else is going to make is going to be the wrong one, right? So you have a lot of education to do in order for people to become comfortable with being in charge of this information. And I think we have to remember that. We have to remember this is one of the incumbent of change is the actual individual behavior, individual background, individual set of values. And we have to overcome that if we want to get there. So I agree with you. It's not the technology, it's many other things.
Now you touch it very well, and I agree with everything you said. The challenge is if you don't fix this, you're going to create a dystopian society. So we have to work on that. And I like that you touch education. This is one of my passions. That's why I started this channel. So I know that Hashgraph has a huge work and contribution to education. Can you elaborate on that? Because I know that you have a lot of things on education. You can see that in the website. But I think for people that are not so familiar, just to have a bit of context of the work you guys are doing in education.
So I'm not sure I remember all of it, but we
Top
do
level. Yeah.
we have partnerships with many universities, for example, to support their activities, to develop new products with them, to engage with their students, for helping them develop on the top of Hedera, and build, a really meaningful solution. I think we probably now have one hackathon every other week in the world somewhere. That's how active we have with, all the developer community, and many of them have students from universities and colleges to engage. So that's really interesting. That's one piece we do with education. We spend a lot of time to educate the market about the future of Web3 technologies, DLT, Hedera, and Lehman Baird, our co-founder, is spending a lot of energy, and he has a passion for that, right? And sharing his knowledge with the rest of the world. Yeah, I'm sure you can find him online, and yeah, he's contagious when it comes to sharing his knowledge. That's come to mind. I'm not sure. I'm sure I'm missing a lot of things we do in education, but those are the things that come to mind.
No, no worries. I appreciate. We'll put the links. There's a lot of fantastic things.
Yeah,
So, I know I'm on the hand. I still have two questions, if it's okay for you.
yeah, yeah.
So one of the things that I actually for doing the preparation, I went and I saw a lot of the fantastic statistics you guys have, and we touch a lot of the case studies and the work you're going to do as well, the network transactions, transaction fee, the efficiency of Hashgraph consensus, and there's a lot of different things that you guys are doing. So one of the things that I want to touch is the work in terms of developer activity that you guys have been doing, building direct quantification of developer activity, and as well introduction of HIP 1084 that indicates activates a protocol level development. So and the part of this is the work we've been working with the likes of Google, IBM, Boeing, and others with Signal enterprise level developing investment. So can you elaborate a bit on this? Because I think one of the things that people don't speak so much is the work on developing on the blockchain and protocols like Hashgraph. And that is really, this is a global effort of companies, corporations, and building software that actually can solve all the problems we mentioned on the macro level.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's why last year when we contributed the entire code base of Hedera to the Linux Foundation under the Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust Project Hiro. When we did that, that was a recognition and the commitment to the developer community, saying we want to operate under the open source ethos, because we want to make sure that everybody's aware of this technology that is, again, amazing. Everybody's working on those technologies to create real impact, and everybody contributes to improving that technology, right? Even though we have very smart people here, we know that the world is very big and we need more brains to work on improving those technologies. So the HIP you mentioned, HIP, which is Hedera Improvement Proposal, is a mechanism that we have put in place a long time ago, actually, not last year, but a long time ago. And it's a mechanism to receive improvement proposal, right? IP improvement proposal to make the network better, whether it's make the smart contracts better or smarter, or changing the nature of the transaction activities, or creating new services, or improving the compliance with tokenization standards. There is a lot of activity. I think we have a pipeline of more than 50 HIP, and it's actually available on Hiro, on the Hiro website. So you can see all the developer activity and all the improvements coming down onto the network to make it even faster, better, and more impactful to the world, really, right? I think that's really important. Commitment to developers.
No, that's fantastic. So one of the last questions I have is you touched before, and you put links to all of the mentions you did so far. So uh, one of the biggest challenges we're facing is definitely the energy consumption. It's funny because I have people in our team that actually are based in Africa, and for instance, one of them today was without electricity, so you had to go to another part of the city to get this. But when it comes to both blockchain and AI, the consumption of electricity it's astonishing, and AI is even worse. So I know that one of the things you mentioned in the beginning was the focus on sustainability and working around sustainability solutions. So can you elaborate how you see us solving this problem, because it's a big problem to say less, but as well how we can actually be smart to get this in a level that first of all doesn't make us even more dependent of the challenge that we have around data and create a couple of potential risks, and there's a lot of kind of risks. So a bit of your work and as well, what solutions do you see? I always like to see the problem and the solution.
Well, I think the first thing is the network itself, because it's a proof of stake consensus mechanism, it does not require a huge amount of energy to create consensus. It's actually extremely efficient, which is why we can charge a very tiny transaction fee, as I mentioned earlier, because the network is very, very efficient. So we consume significantly less energy than when you pay with your card, right? At a merchant, for example, the cost of that from an electricity point of view, I think is, if I remember correctly, is 20 times more than having a transaction on the Hedera network, right? So we consume very, very little electricity for the need of the network. And the little energy that we consume, we actually buy carbon credits every year to offset that, right? So we are very green. That's a commitment from the very beginning. We continue to be committed to sustainability. And then we are committing on building solutions supporting sustainability, like I mentioned earlier with Hyundai and Kia. We have a significant community of developers focused on sustainability under a project called Guardian, an open source project. And again, many different contributors to this project. And they are building platforms, solutions, and integrations for sustainability solution, whether it's compliance with different standards, whether it's an exchange for carbon credits, whether it's the solution I managed earlier about Hyundai and Kia. So that's the second piece of what we do for sustainability. And I think the maybe the last piece is as part of our commitment to each other, we do have a culture within the company to be as sustainable as we can, right? So we are paying a lot of attention to sustainability as a business because we all think it's important. So a lot of different ways to think of it or think of sustainability. I invite the developers on the podcast here to actually go and learn more about what we do under Project Guardian, because that is a very unique set of features that we have.
Thank you. That's a fantastic answer, and I think I like the focus that you as an organization have been very direct towards solving this problem, because I think we need to solve it. Otherwise, we have a problem much bigger. So looking ahead, what are the most exciting developments in the blockchain and Web3 space that you think will shape the next 3 to 5 years?
I would say, that's interesting because maybe a few weeks ago, I would have a different answer than today. I think stablecoin is a big one, even though I'm not sure why we call them stablecoin, but stablecoins, right? So the ability to exchange value pegged to a fiat, whether it's dollar or euro or another currency, in real time, 24 by 7, between individuals, supported by banks and regulators or not, because that's not the case for most of the stablecoins today. They are not supported by banks and regulators, but it's coming. We see that in Europe in particular. I think stablecoin is very interesting. I think it's going to really change the way we we think about exchanging value in the future, not just as individuals, but as organizations as well. And sometimes we use tokenized deposits or tokenized assets or CBDCs, but that's to me that's the same kind of set of things that are exciting. Exciting is the tokenization of money. I think the second piece that is really interesting is what we talked about earlier is tokenization of everything. I think in 3 to 5 years, if you have an asset in the world and that asset is not tokenized, people are going to make fun of you, right? They're going to say, "What? Your asset is not tokenized? What do you mean?" Right? I think that's going to happen faster than we think. And I would even argue that an asset tokenized is going to be more valuable because it is tokenized as opposed to an asset that is not tokenized, right? Very similar assets, very different price because one is tokenized and the other one is not. Because the tokenized one will be more liquid, could invest into it much faster, and so on. So tokenization is the second one. I think the third one is I think we're going to continue to see fragmentation of the market. Every week you have a new project, every week you have a new layer one, a layer two, a new tokenization platform. But fragmentation is a good thing, right? Fragmentation is a sign of innovation, right? When you have innovation, you have fragmentation of the market. You don't have consolidation, you don't have aggregation. You have a lot of people being really excited about the technology, building everywhere, every corner of the planet. And that's good. That's how you're going to generate the next really big thing. So we can continue to do that. And maybe in 5 years, start the beginning of consolidation, which is the next step of innovation, right? I think this is going to happen in 3 to 5 years, the beginning of that, of aggregation. But I love the fragmentation phase of innovation because it's exciting. You see, many people building a lot of different things all over the world.
No, I love it, and I love the way you put it because it's very straightforward. You're right. If we don't have this fragmentation and this challenge, we don't have innovation. It's one
Yeah.
of the biggest.
Yeah.
So, last question. I want to be respectful of your time. So, there's a lot of young people listen to us, and we touch from young professionals to entrepreneurs, and as well a lot of people that have some level of knowledge, some people that have so much level of knowledge. And we're talking about blockchain. We touch about AI. We touch about education. We touch about health. There's a lot of opportunities as well if you put your hands on this. So, as someone that has been going for a lot of different corporations, changing different roles, and from big corporations to much more decentralized corporations, what would be the skills that you think should be the focus of young people, especially the ones that are, for instance, one of the questions I've been having from a lot of people, even in my team, is people that are becoming cynical because of AI, that don't believe in society, and people that are becoming actually very kind of anti-technology as well. Mm-hmm. So I want to address this, and sometimes it comes from all the different directions. So I'm sure you are as well, as you are very social conscious. So a bit of how do you see these things going forward?
I think maybe I'll go back to my dad. My dad was very curious. And I remember we were sitting around the table when we were kids, and he was always asking questions about any topic, anything. And I think that continued to be my journey. Is I continue to ask questions and challenge things I don't understand, challenge the status quo, learn more. We talked about my learning journey that never stops, right? Asking questions for the sake of asking questions. My dad would be probably a very good ChatGPT prompt person today. He would be really good at creating prompt, right? But I think that's going to be a really important human ability, the ability to ask the right questions. So I would say if I would not spend too much time, which is weird what I'm going to say, but I would not spend too much time learning new things. I would spend more time learning how to ask the right questions, because to me that's going to be the future of humanity, is asking the right questions to get to the right outcome. So very generic way to answer your question. I'm not going to tell you to go to school somewhere, but I think really that's the foundation of, I think, who we need to continue to be human, is our ability to be critical thinking, asking the right questions, challenging the environment we live in, and connecting dots between things. Because even though AI is really good at a lot of things, I think the ability for our brain and ourselves to create connections, intellectual connections, physical, social connections, I think that's still going to be a very human thing to do. And I'm not sure we're going to see AIs with that ability to connect things. But anyway, that's what I would say. You know, keep asking questions.
Oh, fantastic. I love it. I love it. And I actually, that's what I told my team to ask questions. And I think every problem has a question and an answer if you ask the question right. So, Eric, it's been an honor to have you here. I think 1 hour, almost in and out. I have much more questions, but I will let you go. I'm sure you have a very busy agenda. So, we'll put all the links to Hashgraph. There's a lot of developings coming, there's a lot of events. That's one of the most dynamic platforms. Even me here, I think you explained it very well. So we put as well. There's a couple of articles that I like as well. Especially there's one fantastic article about the Hashgraph statistics that our team is putting together around all the different fantastic things about your ecosystem. That's probably less well known, but well, for people in the tokens, it's quite well known because it's in the top 18, 17 in the world. So congratulations, Eric. I wish you a great success and thank you for being here and for being so inspiring.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed the discussion. Looking forward to maybe meeting in person one day somewhere.
Yes, we will definitely will.
Yeah.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you for watching this episode. Please share your thoughts, questions, or a topic you want next in the comments section. My team and I read them all and will tailor our future videos around your feedback. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next drop. Until next time, stay healthy and informed.